Hey guys, for today's Mail Art Monday, I'm making a flipbook, and if you want a chance to win the flipbook, you can go over to the Viva Las Vegas Stamps blog, which will be linked in the description box below, and you can find out how you can win this flipbook that I'm making. So I'm starting out with envelopes. I'm making a flipbook out of envelopes, and there's several ways that you can make flipbooks. If you just go to YouTube and search flipbook tutorial, there's lots of different ways you can make it. And I'm just making a pretty simple one. I have this template of an envelope that I'm just taping together. I took an envelope, a small envelope that I had, and then I traced it on cardstock several times and then cut it out, and now I'm just assembling them, putting the pieces together to make it actually look like an envelope. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking the flap from my first envelope and adhering it to the base part of my second envelope. Now the envelope normally closes, like where the envelope creases to close. I have one crease, but then I also scored it a 1/4 of an inch up from that. You'll see in a second what I mean, but because when it closes, I need space for expansion. So when I put all the stuff in that I want to put in, that it's not, my book isn't bulgy, and so there's that 1/4 of an inch of extra space so that when my book closes, it can close nice and flat. So I just glued all my envelopes together, and I realized that the last flap that's going to close the whole book didn't have that extra score mark. So I'm just taking it over to my paper trimmer, and where the envelope normally creases to close, I'm going a 1/4 of an inch up from that and scoring it again, so there's a 1/4 of an inch gap. And you can see here how it's going to close flat and not bulgy or anything weird like that. And then I'm marking where the cover is going to be on my book, so when I'm painting it and it's open, that I don't get confused, because I want the cover to be a little different than the rest of the pages. So you'll notice that my book has a whole bunch of stamping already on it, and the reason I'm not showing you all the stamping that I did is because I thought in the end that you'd be able to see it, but you don't see any of it. So you could totally skip this step. I could have totally skipped this step. And I just went over that with a light coat of gesso, pretty thin, so that you could still see it, because my idea was in the end you'd still be able to see the stamping, but you can't. But I didn't know that at the time. So I have some circle drywall tape, and I'm just randomly putting it all around the edges, leaving the middle of the book more open because I want to do some more stamping there after I put my paint layers and stuff on. So it is adhesive, the drywall tape is adhesive, but it doesn't have, the adhesive isn't that strong, and it doesn't stay that good. So it's important to have some kind of other adhesive holding it down. You could use gesso, that acts as an adhesive. I'm using super heavy gesso because not only do I want to hold the drywall tape down, but I also want to create a kind of blended surface from the middle of my book to the edges of my book where the drywall tape is. So since I didn't have a lot of the super heavy gesso left, I decided to mix it with some modeling paste so that I would have more product to work with, because I didn't think what I had left in my container was going to make it to cover the whole book like I wanted it to. So I'm first taking my mixture and applying it with a brush. I'm trying to adhere down the edges of the drywall tape and also get an even coverage of the gesso all over my page, or all over my book. And then I'm going in with a palette knife and using that to put on a thicker layer, and also to build up the layer of gesso up over my drywall tape to create a more smooth surface from the middle of the book to the edge of the book where the tape is. After that's completely dry, I have some distress paints, Dusty Concord, Cracked Pistachio, Picked Raspberry, and Mermaid Lagoon. And I also have some Dina Wakley Heavy Body Acrylic Paint in Lime Ocean and Tangerine. And then also the Golden Heavy Body Acrylic in Fluorescent Magenta and Fluorescent Pink. I also have some Liquitex Basics Titanium White paint. And before I start painting, I'm going to mark off where my closure is going to be, where the cover or the front of the book is, just so I have an idea as I'm applying my paint. So I'm just going in with the paint, applying it with my finger, alternating between paint and the white, and mixing them together, or mixing the colors together and mixing the white in, make it kind of blendy looking. And I'm trying to be aware of the color wheel and what colors mix and make unattractive colors. So I'm first going in with cool colors, the blues and the greens. And in retrospect, I probably should have dried the first layer of these colors before I went in with the pinks and the oranges, but I didn't. So I'm just drying my first layer and then going in with some more colors for my second layer. I wanted to dry it to minimize the chance of colors mixing and making colors that I didn't intend to happen. And so I'm going in with that dark blue, and then I'm also adding some of the fluorescent colors, the magenta and the pink. And I'm trying to only add a small amount of the fluorescent colors because it can overwhelm very easily. So I used a paintbrush for that so that I can kind of control it better and keep the fluorescence to a smaller area than the rest of the paint. So after I dry the second layer pretty well, I'm going in with the titanium white and blocking out the center of my book. And you might be thinking, like, what was the point of putting all that paint if you're covering up most of it anyway? And I knew that I was going to block out the center, and I knew that a lot of it was going to get covered up. But when I put the white on top, you can still see some of the colors coming through, like where it's covered up. It's just a more muted color, and it blends. It looks like it blends, like from the darker color of the edge to the white in the middle. There's like a blend of a lighter color. And I like the way that looks. And also you can see, even where I go over the drywall tape with the white, you can still see the color through the circles, which I think looks really cool. So I don't mind that a lot of it got covered up. So after all my paint was completely dry, I stamped several Viva Las Vegas stamps on tissue paper. And the reason I stamp on tissue paper instead of directly on my book is because it's kind of a bumpy surface, and if I stamp onto the book, my image might not come out that crisp or clear, and I want to make sure that you can see the stamps really well. And stamping on the tissue paper and then applying it with the Collage Page mat ensures that I get a really nice stamped image onto my book. And the tissue paper kind of dissolves into the background when you add the glue, and you can't even really tell that it's there. And it's important when you stamp on tissue paper to use archival ink and not some kind of ink that when you add the glue is going to smear, because that's not a good look. So now I'm going in with a stamp called Tired of Trying to Cram by VLVS, and I'm cutting it apart. It has like little blacked out words in it, and I'm cutting it apart and then applying it piece by piece onto my book. And this is going to be the cover when it closes. You'll be able to see here in a second when you close the book, that's like the front part. I think I forgot to mention that I used a ton of Viva Las Vegas stamps, and they will all be listed and linked in the description box down below if you're viewing from YouTube. And if you're viewing from the blog, they will be listed and linked there as well. And you can go check them out, see exactly what the stamps are and the stamps that I used if you are so inclined. And I'm putting my book together, seeing if it's missing anything, seeing what I want to add, and I decided to stamp several times all over my book with that little star stamp, kind of fill in some of the gaps. And I'm trying to keep in mind, or I'm trying to think of how I want to add a closure to my book and keep it closed. Before I do that, though, I'm adding some chipboard stars. They're called confetti stars. They're from Wow Studio. And I'm just adding a few of those on the outside of when my book closes. It's going to be the outside of the book. Careful not to add any on the inside because I don't want to make it too fat on the inside because I'm going to add stuff in the pockets. And I felt like if I added any more embellishing on the actual book that it wouldn't close. So I decided for my closure, I was going to add a little piece of Velcro. It's like sticky on both sides and it has the Velcro. So I just cut a little teeny tiny square and then applied it to my flap so it closes with the Velcro. I don't know where the Velcro came from. My boyfriend gave it to me. I don't know where he got it. So I can't give you any more information on it other than that. Off camera, I added some pattern paper to the little pockets of my book and also some letter stickers to kind of describe what's in the pockets. And I filled the one pocket with all kinds of die cuts and another pocket with like different kinds of wood veneer and secured that with a little camera paper clip. And in the center, there'll be a little note to the winner. So that's what my book looks like, closed and opened. And I really like the way it turned out for my very first flip book that I've made. And if you want to enter to win the flip book and all of its contents, make sure you go over to the Viva Las Vegas Stamps blog, which will be linked down below, and you can enter to win and find out the instructions on how you can win. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.